Hello. So for this lesson, I'm going to go over simple shapes. So when you look at a lot of great artwork, you can sometimes notice that they use a lot of fine details, or they use really intricate layering, or they have some really detailed textures to help build up their pieces, but you don't always have to necessarily get this much detail in your work. You can get across the imagery you want to create with really simple shapes and really simple lines. So there's a style called flat style art, and you can see by looking at here, it mostly just relies on coloring to get any shading effects, and it utilizes really simple shapes to create the imagery it wants, and you can get really expressive art or imagery by limiting the amount of shapes and lines you have. So I'm going to walk through a project where I'm just going to make a bird using this flat style art, and I'm going to focus on the use of really simple shapes and kind of a minimal amount of line work to get the details I need. So I'm going to make a European robin for this project. So I'm going to go into Illustrator. I'm going to create new. I want 11 by 8.5, CMYK color, 300 ppi, and then I'm going to hit create. Now for the base of the bird, I just want kind of a squished pear kind of look, but I want to make sure that I have a nice smooth curve around the belly and the head area. So I'm going to make kind of a squished circle, so something that kind of looks like that. Now we might edit this as we kind of start to build up our animal here. So I've got the base of the body, then I'm going to build out the kind of skull area for the bird. I'm going to use the ellipse tool again. And I want this to kind of be a squished circle as well. Make this maybe a little bit bigger. And bring that close to the body there. And I kind of want to smooth out this curve a little because it's a bit drastic around the corners. And if we look at our reference image, the head isn't a perfect circle. It kind of is a bit flat at the top and blends into the body. We'll worry about the neck part here in a second. So I'm going to grab my direct selection tool, which is my white arrow. Remember, your black arrow, which is your selection tool, lets you grab shapes, move them around, resize them, rotate them, all that jazz. Whereas the direct selection tool, which is your white arrow, that lets you grab things like anchor points, paths, handles, and lets you edit the shape itself. So I'm going to select this top anchor point, and I'm going to mess with the handle to kind of get a flatter edge for the head. Maybe something kind of looks a bit like that. And I'm going to grab my pen tool, which is right here. And I want to put one anchor point here, one anchor point there. And I'm going to go across. And I'm going to go back up to this other anchor point, click there, and then I'm going to seal off the shape. Now with the neck, it kind of has a soft curve to it, so I'm going to grab I'm going to go back to the pen tool. I'm going to right click and go to anchor point, or anchor point tool. And I want to add a curve to these parts here. So I'm just going to click on the path and drag a little bit inward. I'm going to do that for each side. And then I'm just going to grab my direct selection tool, and I'm going to grab the anchor points and mess with the handles until I get a nice smooth transition between the body of the bird and the head. That's going to be fine for right now. I'm just going to select all three of these shapes. And I'm going to go down to my Pathfinder panel. If you can't find it, just go to Window, and this should be alphabetical, so just go to Pathfinder and it'll bring up that panel for you. So with all three of those shapes selected, I'm going to hit Unite, which is that first option, and I'll make it into one big shape. And then I'm going to grab my direct selection tool. I'm just going to keep editing this. I think I might actually get rid of this anchor point altogether, so that way it creates this nice smooth transition. I'll get rid of this one too while I'm at it. I'll make sure that I don't deform the head any. I'll get rid of that one too, but I'll have to fix my head here. There we go. So try and create a shape that kind of looks like this. It's kind of a malformed pear type shape, and don't worry about the color for right now. We'll deal with that here in a sec. Next up is I want to make the beak, so I'm just going to grab my ellipse tool, and I'm just going to make a perfect circle. If you hold Shift and Alt before you click, then it will create a perfect circle for you. And then I'm going to go back to that anchor point tool, and you can either hit the top anchor point or the bottom, and I'm just going to click on it once. Now I'll create a nice hard corner to work off of. That'll be the top part of our beak. And I'm just going to grab the direct selection tool, and I'm just going to stretch this out a little bit so the beak looks a bit natural. And then with my black arrow, I'm just going to squish it down. There we go. And then with that black arrow, I can rotate it some as well. And I want to place it on the bird. I'm just going to pick a random color here, so that way I can see it against the black and I can figure out if I need to change the size or change the placement any. I think I'll rotate a bit more. There we go. So that's a good start for right now. Next is I'm going to make the eye. So I'm just going to grab the ellipse tool, and again, Shift Alt. And I'm going to make the eye, and I'm going to go ahead and add the correct colors right now for the eye. So I want the main part of the eye to be black, and then I'm going to add some highlights, and I'm just going to use the ellipse tool again. Except this is going to be white. Put a big one there, and then a slightly smaller one down here, and then even smaller one right next to that. So I'm just going to maybe move these around a bit more. So then I'm just going to select all of them and I'm going to hit Command G. And it's going to group them all together so that way no matter which shape I click on, it'll select all of them. That'll be handy when we go to place this on the bird in a sec here. I'm going to go ahead and add the colors I'm going to add to the bird here into my swatches. So I'm going to go to my color panel and make sure that your swatches are out separate from the bar to your right. Again, if you can't find either one of these panels, just go to Window and find Color and Swatches. So I'm going to double click on this solid square here, and the first color I want to add is just in this hashtag area, just E2CDBF. And if I click off, you'll see it'll create this light cream color. Hit OK. And I'm going to click on this solid square and drag it down into my swatches, and I'll add it to my list there. So I'm going to do this again for all of my colors. This next one is going to be AD9B8A. Should create a darker shade. Again, just click and drag down to the swatches. And then the next color will be 998676. And this should create an even darker shade. And then this next one is going to be an orange, so it'll be F18548. Then I'll just hit OK and add it to my swatches. And I'm going to add 2 yellows. So the first one will be F9D231. Now it'll create this nice bright yellow for us. And then I'll add one more, which will be a slightly darker yellow. And that'll be E0A526. It should create a nice golden color. So there we go. I've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new colors here. I'm going to select this body and I'm going to make it that really light color that we made the first time. And then our beak is going to be that brighter yellow. Now I'll leave the eye as is, but we're going to go ahead and place it on the body. And if you need to resize it, go ahead and do that. I think I kind of like the size for that one. And I'm going to go ahead and if you look at our reference image here, it's got a pale body, but it's got a dark back to it. So I'm going to add a color that kind of flows from the head and down the back of the body. So I'm going to grab my blob brush tool. And if you double click on the tool, that's how you can change the size of it. I'm going to see if 20 will be a good size. Yeah, I think that will work for what we need to do. So I'm going to grab this medium brown color we made so that way I can see it against the body. And I'm not going to worry about staying in the shape, but I'm just going to worry about creating that swoosh. There we go. And don't worry about staying in the lines. Because what we're going to do is I'm going to select this body. I'm going to hold Alt or Option on my keyboard. I'm going to hit the right arrow once. I'm going to let go of the Alt key. And I'm going to hit the left arrow. And what that did is it made a duplicate body for us because we need a reference for when we cut out just the part we need for the dark brown. So select this duplicate we just made and the dark feathering for the back. And we're going to go back to our Pathfinder. And we're going to hit intersect. And where those two shapes intersected is what it's going to keep. But I want to make sure that this color is showing up underneath the beak and the eyeball. A nice thing about Illustrator is it's object-based. It's a bit like working with a scene made out of paper cutouts. depending on how you layer things will change what you can see and how something turns out. So I'm just going to, on my keyboard, hit either Command or Control and then left bracket. And I'm going to keep doing that until this darker color goes behind the eyeball and the beak. You can also just right click, go to Arrange, send backward. So I'm just going to grab my direct selection tool. I'm going to edit this curve a bit more so that way it's a smoother transition. So I think I might build up a bit more of the color a little bit lower, but I want to follow that curve. So I'm going to go back to my blob brush and just add a bit more. And then I'm going to duplicate this one more time and do the intersect. There we go. I'm just using this anchor point tool to kind of edit the handles on this particular point a bit more. So there, I think that will look good. And then European Robin has a bit of orange to the body there, so I'm going to add that as well. I'm going to use my blob brush again, and I'm going to select that orange color we made. And this, I'm just going to color a little bit down. I'm going to go to about that point, and then I'm going to create like a scalloped edge into these feathers over here. And again, I'm not worried about staying in the lines quite yet. I'm just going to make sure the orange covers where I need it to. And then I'm going to make sure that a little bit of orange goes down this way, because if I look back at my reference, it kind of had a little V shape in the front, or an M shape. There. Alright, so again, I'm going to duplicate this body. I'm going to select these two. I'm doing the intersect option. And then I'm hitting either Command or Control and left bracket, and I'm going to keep sending that backward until it's underneath that set of darker feathers. And then I can edit this a bit more using my direct selection tool and my pen tools. There we go. So get something a bit like that. And I'm going to go ahead and add the feet. So I'm going to grab this yellow. And I'm going to get a slightly smaller brush for this, so I can get some finer details. And I'm just going to do 3 little humps, or just 3 little arches. Just make sure they're colored in. And I'll go even smaller, so that way I can get a nice defined scallop for each toe. There we go. there. Just gonna color it in. I think that's a good shape. I'm just gonna clean that curve up a bit more. And then I'm just gonna use my black arrow, kind of move it around, maybe make it a bit bigger. Now I want some lines to kind of help to differentiate each toe and also to add a slit to the beak. I'm going to worry about the toes right now. I'm going to grab this dark yellow, and then I'm going to grab this arch tool. It should be underneath your type tool, and I'm going to go to this top part here, down to there, and then if it doesn't keep the color, just go up to your control panel up here. Make sure you're in the square that has the hole in the middle. And I'm going to select that dark yellow we made. And you'll see it creates a line, and you can use your direct selection tool to change the arch. Now you can see that when I deselect it, it has a really hard straight end to it. I'm going to select it. I'm going to go up to stroke, and I'm going to actually click on the word, and that gives me some settings where I can actually change how my strokes look. So under cap, I'm going to change that to rounded cap, so that way that ending isn't going to be a little less sharp. And I'm going to grab my arch tool again, and I'm going to do that to this other side as well. Use my white arrow to edit. And it should have remembered to keep the rounded caps this time. So I'm happy with how that looks. So I'm going to grab all three of these elements, and I'm going to hit Command G to group them. And then I'm going to hold Alt and just click and drag it over. And I think I might even transform and reflect it just so that way it looks a little bit different from the other foot. Make sure it's set to vertical and just hit OK. And then I'm going to hit Command left bracket and just send it all the way to the back. So I think I'm going to select both these feet and just bring them a little bit forward. And that was good. And then I'm going to add a slit to this mouth here. Again, I'm just going to use my arc tool. And I'm going to create just the path at first, then I'll use my direct selection tool to edit it a bit more. And I think I'm going to make it a happy bird. You can make a frowning bird if you want, but I'm going to make mine happy. And again, just make sure it has the rounded caps on it. To double check that, if you can't really tell, just select the path, go to stroke, and under cap, make sure it says round cap. So next up is I'm going to make the wing. So I'm going to grab my blob brush tool. Make sure you're using the blob brush tool, not the paintbrush tool. And I'm going to grab this dark color that we used. And I'm just going to create the basic shape of the wing. Just going to add some scalloping. There. So I'm just going to drag the wing over once I have it made. I'm going to rotate it and resize it as need be. Right, and then I'm going to add the tail. I'm going to grab my blob brush tool, make it a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to just make the tail. Oop. I'm going to change it to just a random color so that way I don't have to worry about it merging into the rest of my shape. And I'm just going to do a real simple shape for it. I'm going to match it with this color here, and I'm just going to send it all the way to the back. I think that looks good. I might fix this end a bit more so the scalloping looks more natural. There we go. I think that's a good shape. So I'm going to grab my tail. I'm going to resize it, and I'm going to duplicate it because I want to add a band of the darker color at the end of it. I want to get that exact shape the scalloping has at the end of the tail. So I'm going to have that tail selected. I'm going to hold Alt or Option on my keyboard. I'm just going to hit one of my arrow keys once, and I'm just going to reposition it so it's at the same spot, and then I'm just going to move it a little bit downwards. And I'm going to pick this dark color we made, and then I'm going to send this tail all the way to the back. And I'm just going to mess with this positioning until I get a nice even band. Okay, so I've got a really nice shape for the overall bird, and it looks nice, but I think I'm going to add just a couple small details to kind of build it out a bit more. So I'm going to go over into my pasteboard. I'm going to create a custom brush. That way I can add some little feather details. So I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, and I want a perfectly round circle. And I'm going to grab my direct selection tool. I'm going to select that very top anchor point. I'm going to hit delete or backspace, and that will create a nice even arc down here. So then I'm going to go over to my width tool. It's kind of this weird looking abstract swan type shape. The shortcut for it should be Shift W. But with that tool selected, I'm going to go to the top of the arch here. I'm going to click, and I'm going to just drag outward to expand that arch so it creates this nice tapering effect. Should kind of look like a crescent moon on its side. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to go down into the grayscale colors, and I'm going to pick this color here. It's going to be the 5th one from the end. If you can't find these swatches on your computer, you can just go up to color, double click, and that's the CMYK makeup for it. And when you select the color, make sure you have this square here selected. It should be the square with a hole in it. That controls the color of your stroke. If you have this one selected, when you pick the color, it's going to fill in the inside of the shape like that. We don't want that. We just want to change the color of the stroke. So once I've done that, I'm going to hold Option on my keyboard and hit the up arrow once. Then I'm going to let go of the Option key, and I'm going to change this color to this gray right here. And then with my up arrow, I want to keep going up. I don't want to go so far up that you can see a gap between the two, but I want to go up so that way you can kind of see the two colors. And I'm going to use my width tool again to kind of resize this top one so that way it's skinnier than the bottom. To change the width, I'm just going to go to this edge here and just bring it in. Maybe not quite that much. Just make it a little bit thinner. So once I have this made the way I want, now when I make the brush, it's going to use this size as a reference. So I want to make it a little bit smaller. and make sure your chain link is turned on. I'm going to change the width to 0.2. That should automatically resize the height, and that should make a small enough detail for what we want to do. So I have both of those selected. So I want to go into my brush panel. If you can't find your brush panel, go to Window, Brushes, and it should be in there. With both of these selected, I'm going to hit this new brush button. I want a pattern brush, and I'll hit OK. And I'll name this Feather Texture. Go to this third square here, and we're going to tell it auto between, so that way it knows what to do with a corner like that. And then over where it says colorization, we're going to change method to hue shift. And what that does is it kind of keeps the shade or the value of a color, but it will allow you to change it. So if we don't want the gray, we can change it to orange, or we can change it to brown, or anything we want, but it'll still have that color differentiation we had between the two layers. So make sure everything is set like this. Now let's hit OK. And now I can go over here and I can use my line tool and place where I want to put those decorations. And I'm going to, in my brushes panel, I'm just going to select that option, and it will add them onto my bird, and then I can color them to kind of fit with whatever part of the bird it's sitting on. So I want to add just one detail there. And I'm going to duplicate this one, and I'm going to just expand the line so that way it adds a few more scallops. I think 3 will be good. I'm just going to bring it down here. And I think I'll add one more. Because you don't have to add a whole row of these going down the entire body in order to imply that the whole thing is covered in feathers. We can just add a few, and then the viewer knows that the whole thing is covered in feathers. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple up here too, except I'm going to change the color. And I want to add a bunch to the wings here. So I want to make sure I keep parallel with the scalloping I have right there. And I'm not going to worry too much about whether I stay in the lines right now, because I can fix that here in a sec. But I'm going to add the bottom row and the top row. I'm going to rotate these just a touch. Okay. And then rather than trying to duplicate them and try and distribute them evenly, I'm just going to select both of these. I'm going to go to Object, Blend, Make. And I'll probably just add one more in the middle. I'm going to go to Object, Blend, Blend Options. Where it says Smooth Color, I'm going to change that to Specified Steps. Turn on Preview so I can see what's happening. And I think I'm going to add in 3 more in the middle there. Then I'll just hit OK. Then I just go to Object, Blend, Expand, and it creates those individual lines for me. So I can go back in with my Direct Selection tool, and I can fix the size of the lines and how the arches are filling up the wing by grabbing the anchor points and just trying to get it as close as I can. Make sure you're getting the anchor point, not the entire path. So there I've added these small details. You can see that I didn't have to add a bunch of rows to make the illusion that's covered in feathers. And I think I'm going to just shift this down a little bit. There. Okay, so this looks a little bit better, but I'm going to add a gradient to some of these colors so that way it just looks a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to find my gradient panel. It looks like this. If you can't find it, just go to Window, Gradient, and I'm actually going to just click and drag this out because it's easier to have this as a floating panel so that we can just drag colors into it. So I'm going to select this base body that we made. I'm going to click on the gradient and it'll apply the gradient to it. I'm going to go ahead and apply that cream color we used for it. I'm going to drag out the white and I'm going to click to add another knob there, and then I'm going to click and drag out the black. And I want to make this a slightly darker color. So if you have a knob selected down here, when you go to the color panel, it'll have it selected in here so you can edit the color a little bit easier. And I kind of like the way that shade looks. Now, once you've applied a gradient to a shape, you can actually go to your gradient tool. Your gradient tool is going to be on the left. It has the same symbol as the gradient icon for the panel. And it pulls up this bar for you. What you can do is you can actually click and drag, and you can actually control kind of the angle a bit more. And if you are using a radial gradient, you can control the shape of the circle and the placement of the colors a bit more too. I'm going to darken this a bit more, so I'm going to grab this knob, I'm going to double click on it, and I'm just going to make it a tad darker. I'm going to mess with this. I'm actually trying to extend the gradient out so that way the transition isn't quite as harsh. So there. There, I think that's a good look. So that just implies a bit of shadow, a bit of shading down at the bottom. And then next up is I'm going to select this hood part that we made. And I'm going to click and drag a swatch into the gradient here. And you can see it starts applying it. I'm going to clear this out so it just has the original color that we had on it. But then I'm going to add this light cream color that we used. I'm going to make that the second knob. Then I'm going to go back to my gradient tool, and I'm going to use this to kind of change the transition so that way we've got a nice light part up here, and it transitions into the original tone down here so that way it still blends in with our tail. I think I'm actually going to add a bit of white up at the top, and that will just create a bit more of a highlight. Just got to make sure that you don't go too far down because we still want the body to be transitioned with the tail. So you don't want to usually go further than what the wing is because the wing should cover up any issues with transition. So I think I'm happy with how my little bird looks. So you can add a couple more details if you want, or you can maybe change the shape of the head if you need to, or the shape of the beak, or any of the other assets. But other than that, once you're happy with it, you can go ahead and just save it and then turn it in.